Hello everyone, welcome to another video today. This is the end of month reading update. So I'm going to get straight into it. I read a total of 13 books over the month of August, which is great. It's one of the highest amount of books that I've read in a long time. And I am very excited to share what I have read since we last checked in at the middle of the month. The last book that I shared then was book number 6, so we're going to move straight into the next one. So the first book that we're going to talk about today is called Luminous. It's by 𝓤𝓱𝓮𝓻 𝓬𝓱𝓮𝓻. I read it as an audiobook, and I read it because I wanted to get a feel for this author since her book The Poison Season is the book club read for August, and I just wanted to know what my expectations would sort of feel like. And this follows Leora, and she has spent her entire life locked away because she has a hidden magic that she doesn't really know much about, and her family have protected her as such. Unfortunately, she gets caught out one day by Darius, who is the king's warlock, and he takes mages and anyone with magical power into his sort of, I wouldn't say control, but definitely takes them away from their families, and is supposed to be this horrible person, and she's quite frightened of him, as is the rest of her family. Unfortunately, instead of taking her, because the local witch, that is the Leora's main interest, the local witch who is the mother of Leora's love interest, speaks up for her and takes her on as an apprentice to save her from going, and Darius takes Leora's youngest sister into his care, sort of like a protection against her betraying him. And the witch that Leora works under is one that her power works through tapestry. She weaves things into life, which I thought was really interesting, and I wish that this book had spent more time on this aspect of magic, and I would have liked it if maybe Leora had learnt this a bit more, or just like there was a lot of room to spend on the magic system, and I feel like the first half and the second half of these books go very different. Anyway, her love interest is called 𝓬𝓻, and 𝓬𝓻, and they end up breaking Darius's biggest project, which the witch had been working on, and releasing some magical beasts into the world that will take out people. And so in order to get them back, they hunt them down in the company of Darius and 2 other magical beings. And like I said, the first half was really interesting. I loved the magic system. I loved how Leora was learning about magic, because she had no idea about herself. Her family had kept her so wrapped up about she had to hide everything about herself, and so it was really nice to be able to see her extend into her magic and learn a bit more about it. However, the second half of the book is chasing the beasts, and whilst that was interesting as well, I did feel like the storyline sort of wavered and lost its sort of pathway. I actually really liked the villain. Maybe that's because I like villains now, I'm in my villain era, but I actually found him to be more interesting than the love interest. I had no interest at all in 𝓬𝓻. I just thought he was okay, and Leora was very much a 𝓤𝓱𝓮𝓻, so I felt like the 2 of them together didn't really spark my interest to love them or fight for them. But Darius was just so interesting, and he is a product of misfortune, and the reason why he is the way he is now is because he's had a really tough past, and I would have loved that to be explored a bit more, and Leora's connection with him to deepen. And there was elements of that, but it unfortunately didn't go the way that I would have liked. I also felt that because this was a standalone, whilst it wrapped up okay, I still would have liked more in this world, and I was actually expecting there to be more. When we got to the end and it ended the way it did, I wasn't satisfied 100%. So overall, I gave this book 4 stars because I really liked the writing style, and there were so many good elements to it. It just didn't come together the way that I was hoping it would in the end. The next book I read, and I actually read this in a mixture of ways, but I do have a physical copy of it, is House of Sky and Breath, Crescent City, book 2 by Sarah J. Maas. And I gave this 4 stars as well. And I was really frustrated that I gave it 4 stars, because for a lot of this book, I didn't enjoy it. And I had that experience with House of Earth and Blood as well, but in the end the world building really captured me, and I was like, darn, these things have gotten to me. And it was similar in this way. I still don't care for the main 2 characters, Hunt and Bryce. I find them very uninteresting. And it felt very much so like Bryce and a Sausage Party with how many men there were in this book. But the side characters really hold my interest, and Tharian has been one that I liked from book 1 and loved in this one. And then there were several other characters, Ethan and all their little side stories that were really interesting, and also the overall arc of the Thunderbird. I'm not really going to go into the synopsis because a lot of people already know about this book. I wanted to hate it, let's be real. I am no avid SJM fan. I've read now all of her books that are released, and I wouldn't say that I hate them. I find her problematic at best with some of her writing styles, and I loved Throne of Glass series, so reading this just doesn't appeal to me as much as Throne of Glass. I would love for more of that kind of writing, but for what it was and for how invested I got in the characters, and I think it's just inevitable when it's this big, I gave it 4 stars. I am going to read book 3 as well, just because I want to know what happens. And I did come into this knowing spoilers, because I am not someone who is afraid of spoilers, and I was surprised by some of the things that happened that I knew about and how they went down, and there were other elements that I didn't know, so that was quite good. Yeah, not much to say about it. I didn't want to like it as much as I did, but those side characters got me, so I'm glad that I read it. It's finally done. The biggest book that I've got on my shelf at the moment that's not read. Now it's read. So the next book I read was an e-arc, and it was The Boyfriend Candidate by Ashley Winstead. And I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm so sad that I ended up giving it 4 stars. So this follows Alexis. She is a school librarian. She's quite shy, and on the eve of the anniversary of her boyfriend telling her that she was horrible in bed and breaking up with her after cheating on her for the 2nd time, she goes to a hotel and is convinced that she's going to have a one-night stand and just like reinvent herself overnight, and then after that maybe she'll feel a bit better because she's sick of mourning this like insecurity about herself. So she goes to the hotel and she meets a man there called Logan, and she thinks, why not, let's have a one-night stand with this guy. And they almost get there when the hotel goes up in flames, and so they're rushed out. She unfortunately falls down the stairs and he carries her out, and there is a photo taken of them in an embrace in half undressed state before he flees and leaves her there. So she thinks she's never going to see him again. Turns out that Logan's not just some random businessman, but he's actually running for governor of what is he running a governor of? Texas. He's running for governor of Texas, and this is a huge hit on his campaign. And so instead of just wiping this under the bench and carrying on, they decide to fake date for his image, and it works out really well for them. I think they have like a really interesting chemistry, and I really wanted them to get together. I loved the whole story between the two of them, and I thought that they were great. However, the reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because the author decided to introduce an obstacle in the storyline that I didn't agree with, and I felt like it was really not needed and caused unnecessary angst that could have been like crafted in a different way. And I just felt like her sister Alexis's sister caused too much trouble and didn't get any consequences for it. So that really threw me off, and I wish that it hadn't, because I really was enjoying this. It's a really good romance read, and I highly recommend it even if these things did happen. I enjoyed myself. I just wished that they didn't happen, because I wanted more time spent between Alexis and Logan. But the time that you do spend between them is fantastic. I will say that if you're looking for like a smut heavy romance, or like lots of like romantic intimate scenes, this is not one for it. The tension's there the whole way through, and it's wonderful. I love banter and tension, so that's why I enjoyed it so much. But the actual physical intimacy doesn't come until much later into the book, very late into the book actually. So if that's something that you're looking for, maybe this won't be as high a rating for you as it is for me, but I highly recommend it all the same. And it comes out on, actually it's already out. That's interesting, because I got it as an e-arc through NetGalley, and it's not out yet published wise that way. I think maybe in the UK, which is where I get my arcs from, it's probably not out yet, but it is out apparently on Goodreads. It's saying that since May, so do check it out if you want to. It's called The Boyfriend Candidate by Ashley Winstead. The next book that I listened to is The Belle of Belgrave Square by Mimi Matthews. This is Bells of London's book number 2. The last book that I listened to and shared my thoughts on in the other video for August's reading update was the first book in this series, and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and it actually ended up being my favourite book of the month. And this one was a huge contender for it as well, because I also gave it 5 stars, if you can see down here. And I'm just, I thought this one was going to be the better of the two. So this follows a very anxious young lady called, where is her name? Julia, and she is from a family her parents are quite ill all the time, and because of that they see Julia as their caregiver, and they expect her to be around at all times. Now she's had 3 seasons and is still not married off, and she feels that she's got nothing to give. Because she gets anxious in social situations, she worries that she'll never get married and no one will ever want her. Well, incoming Captain Jasper Blunt, and he is a war hero and is in need of a wife because he has some I can never say that word, illegitimate children. I think I'm saying that wrong still. And he needs a wife, and he needs a rich wife because his house is falling down and needs repairs, and he wants to look after his children that he came back from the war to find that he had. And I loved this so much. You've got the sort of grumpy style of the captain, and then you've got this shy girl and Julia, and the two of them just connect because they both love books, and there's a specific author in the book that they both talk about a lot, and Julia gets to sort of interact with a male without having to feel the pressures of society and how to interact that way without causing a scene, because he is quite comforting to her. The story follows that they end up getting married out of convenience, and for her it's to get away from her family and the way that they've treated her. She just needs to escape. And for him, obviously we already know he has children and a broken down house that he needs to repair, so he needs her inheritance or dowry. And it's so delightful, these two coming together. I love them so much. The unfortunate part, even though I gave it 5 stars, is just that the second half just dragged a little bit, and that's why I didn't end up choosing this one as my favourite book of the month. I preferred these two characters, but I preferred the story for the first one a bit more. The first half of the story had me completely hooked. It just fell a little bit a wayside at points, and the angst at the end was a little bit too much. Still gave it 5 stars because I really did enjoy it all the way through. Just ever so slightly not as good as the first one. And I'm so excited because book 3 is coming soon and I cannot wait to read it. I probably won't be able to listen to it because it won't come out at the same time, and that's okay. I'll just read an ebook copy or something like that, or get a physical copy. But I really enjoy this series, and if you're interested in historical romance that aren't like full of smut, but there is some, and also just like really building connection and talking about topics that were around at this time in the Regency or Victorian era, definitely give Bells of London by Mimi Matthews a go, because it's so far been a very great series to me. The next book I finished was The Damned by 𝓤𝓲𝓷𝓭. This is book 2 in the Beautiful series, and I gave it 4 stars. This was priming up to be a 5-star read as well, and I actually worried, well, I wouldn't say worried, it's not that dramatic, that this would knock one of those historical romances off. Again, it is a historical read. It is a paranormal historical fantasy, and it follows along from what was set up in book 1, where Celine left Paris because she killed someone in self-defense and didn't want that to follow her, and end up in jail or dead, or what would come for her because she's a woman, and has gone to New Orleans and got caught up in some paranormal murder mystery, and this one follows more so along with the main male character Bastien, and he's just recently turned into a vampire and his struggles with becoming one. I really enjoyed that character development and like his inner turmoil and how that was affecting him. This book has multiple point of views in it as well, which I found fascinating, because we get the main story through Bastien, but we get to see through the lens of other people around Bastien just how that's affecting him and everything. The storyline is really captivating. However, I don't know what happened, but the author threw the story away. So there are more elements to this. There are more paranormal characters. There are fae, there are werewolves, there are vampires. I'm assuming there'll be more. There's goblins that are mentioned in this book as well, in a small scene, and there is multiple universes. Well, I wouldn't say universes, but like there's New Orleans, and then there is like a magical land where the fae come from, and all that, and there's a whole lore around it. It's very interesting, but when we actually go to the magical land, I feel like that's when the book just falls away. I think it's really pointless spending time there. I'm sure it's going to be made to have some level of help towards book 3, but it felt very much so like posturing and just setting up, but also felt pointless in this book. There wasn't anything that really needed to happen in this world in order for things to develop. And then when you get back from that world, everything goes to hell, basically. It's like a time bomb's just gone off and everything's exploded, and it just felt like the author sacrificed the last 25%, maybe last 30% of this book, which was so disappointing to me because I was so invested in this book. I was loving it. It was so easy to read. It's very consuming. And then I was just spending my time cursing what the F every few minutes as to what was happening in this book. It just made no sense why the author did that, and I'm hoping that that will be explained when we get into The Righteous, which my friend and I, who read this with me, my friend read it with me, we're reading book 3 this month because I'm filming this on the 1st of August, and so yeah, I was so disappointed because I was so hopeful that this one would be a 5-star read. Unfortunately it was 4. I still really enjoyed it, but I just don't understand where the author wanted to take the story in that last bit. and would have preferred to stay on track with what we were already setting up. I don't know. Hopefully it'll all make sense in book 3 and will work out. I'm looking forward to following the new characters in book 3. They're in here as side characters, so to have their storyline come to the forefront will be really interesting, because I like both characters. So yeah, gonna look forward to reading that, but I'm sad that this one only ended up being 4 stars in the end. And I have 2 more books to talk about. One was a novella. I read this to fill the short book prompt that I had, and it is called How to Get a Girlfriend When You're a Terrifying Monster by 𝓤𝓻𝓮𝓻. I got this in one of the Stuff Your Kindle sessions, I think last year, and it was the shortest book on my list that I was going through what was on my Kindle and just picking out what was the smallest book just to fill the gap, and this was again a little bit of a letdown. I gave it 3 stars in the end, but the start had me so hooked. I thought it was so delightful. It follows 𝓤𝓻, and 𝓤𝓻 is not a person. She is made up of a matter that comes from another realm called the Endless, and slowly but surely she pulls away like a fragment and starts to morph her memories and her body shape, and she wants to be something more than just a fragment. And there is a human that is using portals to come in and see if they can research this realm. And every time the human comes through the portal, 𝓤𝓻 tries her best to shape herself to be more humanoid, and it's just so delightful. It's so cute. And then once the human is there and we start to get Shan, I cannot say this name, Shan, I'm not sure, but once we start to get her point of view, I feel like the story just falls apart. It turns very sci-fi and very weird, like very strange, and because it's such a short story, there isn't enough time to sort of explain all the things that are being over-explained, and things start to move very quickly, and where it ends off it's just quite unsatisfying. I think that the next book, because it does say that there's another book in the series, might cover a bit more. I'm not sure if it's the same characters or not, but essentially I found that there wasn't anything that built this to be a sapphic romance between the 2 characters aside from a little bit of crushing, and I didn't find that there was enough room for that to grow, and the storyline was just weird after 𝓤𝓻 actually becomes more of herself. Yeah, I'm glad that I've read it, and I'm glad I filled a prompt, and that means another book can be taken off my Kindle that's just been sitting there for a while, but it was just okay. And I'm sad because the start was really, really delightful. There was a few parts where I laughed, so yeah, could have been so much greater. It was just okay. And the final book for the month is Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. I hope I'm saying that right. Now this book is already out. It has been out since 2018. However, it's being re-released this year by Bloom Books, and I got an ARC of it, and I had heard so many great things about this series, and I like the concept of the 4 horsemen and hell and heaven and all that, and the conversations around that. I think it's quite interesting as a historian and also just as a reader, and so I decided to give this a go because I'd heard great things, and I gave it 3 stars because I just felt like, again, it was okay. This is a very toxic world, obviously with it being apocalyptic, because pestilence has come to Earth to give the plague to everyone, as one of the first in God's plan to save humans from themselves. It's very gory, and there's trigger warnings of death and plague and imprisonment and torture and things like that, and normally they're not my type of books. Gore and that is definitely not for me. Ironically, I actually found a scene around vomit more off-putting than the rest of it, which is saying something. But overall, this is a dark fantasy romance, and the main character, Sarah or Sarah, I can't tell, it's Sarah without an H, so could be Sarah. She wants to kill Pestilence because she drew the end of the stick from the other people that were in her township that were there with her and ready to flee. Only one stayed behind, and that was her, and she was to kill Pestilence, and she does that, but she doesn't realise that Pestilence cannot be killed. So he takes her as his prisoner, and he treats her really poorly, and through toxic force proximity and like a bit of like what is that syndrome? Stockholm syndrome. They start to connect, and I did like that Pestilence learned more about humans through Sarah. I'm going to just call her that. But this just wasn't right for me. I think I wasn't the right reader for it. I just found it all a bit ick, and couldn't get past some of the ways that they treated each other in order to start suddenly loving each other. I mean, it's okay. It kept me captivated. I actually consumed this in 2 sessions, so it's not like it's hard to read. It just didn't gel with the romance aspect of it. I found the world setting to be well done. Like, you could really imagine this apocalyptic world with everyone suffering, and the hurt and the anger and all that was really well done. I just didn't seem to grasp the whole romance, which was a shame because there were some good elements to it, but yeah, just wasn't for me. And that's where I'll end today's story. Well, not today's story, I'll end today's video. So yeah, overall 13 books, my average rating was 3.9, and there were some really great reads, and I gave out 6 4-stars. So I think that's a pretty decent amount for 1 month. I'm grateful that you've spent some time with me today, and if you made it to the end, thank you so much. If you could leave a heart in the comments, that would be great, because I'd love to give you one back. Again, thank you so much for listening to me rant about books. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you've had the same thoughts or different thoughts. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Thank you again so much for spending time with me. I'll see you soon. Bye everyone.